There have been more protests in cities in Israel, even though the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has postponed his controversial reforms to the judicial system. In unprecedented events, the country's biggest trade union called a strike, and Israelis watched society close down around them on Monday. Our reporter Sofia Betitza has more details.
Israel is gripped by one of the worst political crises in its history. There's outrage about a reform that would allow ministers to choose Supreme Court judges and would limit the court's powers. And after 3 months of protests, on Monday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu decided to halt his plan. In a TV address, he accused extremists of trying to divide the nation.
Out of national responsibility, I have decided to suspend the second and third readings of the law. There is one thing that I cannot accept. There is an extremist minority that is prepared to tear our country to pieces. It is using violence and incitement. It is talking civil war.
The US, a key ally of Israel, welcomed the move.
Compromise is precisely what we have been calling for. And we continue to strongly urge Israeli leaders to find a compromise as soon as possible.
But will this be enough? Shortly after the announcement, a planned nationwide strike was called off. The delay will buy time for Mr. Netanyahu, but it's not going to solve the problem. Demonstrators want this bill to be scrapped, not delayed. And that's why last night, tens of thousands of people again took to the streets.
It's not a victory at all. This struggle will have to continue. It's pure lies, as usual. It's just taking a break in order to come back stronger.
Police used stun grenades and mortar cannons to disperse protesters in Tel Aviv. But there are people in Israel who support Netanyahu's reform. They were protesting last night too.
It's time for a change. The people elected this government, and we want this government to elect the Supreme Court, and not for the court to elect itself. This is how democracy works.
The legislation will now be considered further in the next session of Parliament, at the end of April. And Netanyahu is walking a tightrope. His coalition includes right-wing, nationalist and ultra-Orthodox parties. He depends on them to remain in power. And they've insisted that the reform must be passed at all costs. So the government is unlikely to back down. Sofia Betitza, BBC News.